My wife declared, "My ex is coming to my birthday. Be cool, or it's over." I replied, "I'll be very cool." Then I greeted him at the door, shook his hand, and said, "She's all yours, man." I was just leaving. Her party ended the moment I walked out. I measure life in millimeters, not moments, because moments are emotional, and emotions can't fit neatly on a blueprint. I'm Marcus Reed, 34, licensed architect, caffeine enthusiast, and apparently a man who gets turned on by a perfect 90-degree corner. My wife, Sophie Lane, is my chaotic counterpoint, half glitter bomb, half unmedicated optimism. Where I see load-bearing walls, she sees feng shui opportunities. We're the kind of couple that looks balanced from a distance and like an active construction site up close. You know that guy who triple-checks the level on a picture frame? That's me. You know that woman who says it's fine while sticking decals on freshly painted walls? That's her. Marriage, ladies and gentlemen, a partnership between precision and chaos, held together by shared Wi-Fi and mild denial. Now, I was building something special, her birthday. Not just any birthday, but the one that would make her friends clutch pearls and whisper, "He really gets her." I didn't want another backyard vibe with warm white lights and half-deflated balloons. No, sir. I wanted architectural glory, a domestic masterpiece that screamed, "Thoughtful husband," and whispered, "I outplanned God." I had an idea that would fuse my profession with romance, a fully automated house system I coded myself, called Aurora. Imagine Alexa on steroids, with mood lighting that could sense conversation tone, music that faded with applause, and timed LED bursts for her cake entrance. I even gave it a voice, calm, gender-neutral, slightly smug. Aurora was my love letter written in binary. Sophie thought I was joking when I said I wanted a lighting rehearsal, but I wasn't. Thursday night before the party, I stood in the living room with a laser measurer, whispering to myself like a lunatic. Angle of dispersion, 45 degrees. Beam intensity, check. Ambient loop, God, that's beautiful. Meanwhile, Sophie was on the couch, painting her nails red and scrolling Pinterest like a general planning a glitter invasion. "Babe, maybe people don't need to feel like they're entering the Met Gala," she teased. "Maybe they just need drinks and fun." I looked up from my tablet and said the nerdiest words known to marriage. Fun is relative to design symmetry. She groaned so hard the thermostat adjusted itself out of pity. Still, I was in my element, curating the guest list like I was assembling the Avengers of suburban sociability. Her work friends, my colleagues, her yoga pals, the neighbor who thinks kombucha is wine. Everyone who ever thought Sophie and I were the perfect match. I made spreadsheets for snacks, timeline charts for speeches, and a social flow plan that mapped traffic between the kitchen and the patio like it was an evacuation drill. I even labeled the bathroom door with a minimalist vinyl sign that said "Relief Zone." I'm not proud, but I'm also not ashamed. The crowning jewel, though, was the bar cart. A rolling temple of liquors and liqueurs, curated with the seriousness of a museum exhibit. I had bourbon that smelled like burnt oak and self-respect, gin infused with herbs I couldn't pronounce, and a champagne cooler that hummed softly, like it knew it was above me in social rank. I imagined Sophie walking in, her eyes lighting up at the spectacle. I pictured her saying, "Marcus, you didn't have to do all this," and me pretending to be modest while secretly hoping she'd nominate me for Husband of the Year. The dream was alive. The dream was laminated. Now, Sophie, God bless her, wasn't ungrateful. She loved the effort. She really did. She'd run her fingers along my printed floor plan and go, "This is why I married you. You make order look sexy." But she also had that twinkle, that mischievous, "what if we just," energy that gave me ulcers. Like when she once moved my drafting table to make room for more creativity. Creativity apparently needed the northeast corner where my sanity used to live. But fine, that's marriage. A constant redesign you didn't approve, but somehow signed. I kept rehearsing my casual host, look in the mirror. You know, the one that says, "Oh, this old thing?" Just a world-class party I threw between errands. I practiced hand gestures too. Casual hand in pocket, welcoming smile, confident nod to the playlist. I wanted to look like a man in control of chaos. My reflection, however, looked like a man auditioning for a toothpaste commercial while dying inside. Sophie walked in mid-pose. "You good?" she asked, eyebrow raised. Totally, I lied. Just visualizing success. You look like you're trying to sell a timeshare, she said, grabbing a snack. Love is honesty, even when it's brutal. Then came the moment that shifted the entire architectural balance of my peaceful existence. 3 days before the party, Tuesday afternoon, I was in my office, reviewing final catering emails. Sophie strolled in wearing joggers, hair up, holding a pair of scissors and a coupon book. She looked like every suburban goddess who multitasks between domesticity and mild destruction. Hey babe, she said sweetly, clipping away. Quick thing. You know those 2 words, quick thing, that precede emotional earthquakes? Yeah. What's up? I asked, distracted by an invoice. She snipped, smiled, and said, Theo's in town. He's coming to my birthday. Be cool, or it's over. Snip. Like she was trimming my sanity. Now, a sane man would have asked questions. Who's Theo again? Why him? Why now? But see, when your wife drops the name of her ex like it's a +1 on an invite, your brain short-circuits. I blinked, recalibrated, and finally said, I'll be very cool. My voice was so calm it scared even me. Sophie tilted her head, testing me like a science project. You sure? Absolutely, I said. Colder than a freezer sale in February. She laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. The architect in me was already drafting emotional blueprints, stress load, tension lines, possible exits. Be cool, or it's over. A simple condition, like being told to juggle knives for love. Later that night, I sat on the couch, staring at Aurora's LED strip pulsing softly in rhythm with my anxiety. I thought about Theo, her ex, her once-upon-a-time heartache, the man who smelled like expensive cologne and emotional instability. I'd seen him once at a charity event years ago. The guy had cheekbones that could cut drywall and the smirk of someone who's never heard the word no. Sophie swore they were ancient history, a museum exhibit closed for good. But now he was suddenly in town, like a sequel no one asked for. I tried to rationalize. Maybe she wanted closure. Maybe she wanted to prove something. To me, to herself, to the universe that thinks exes should remain theoretical. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about Theo. It was about control. Sophie's world runs on chaos management. My stability bores her. Her spontaneity terrifies me. We're like 2 apps that look compatible but crash when opened together. And yet, I loved her. Enough to plan a party, code a system, and pretend that be cool or it's over wasn't emotional terrorism wrapped in lipstick. That night, while she slept, I found myself measuring the kitchen island again, just to feel grounded. Tape out, pencil behind ear, whispering numbers like prayers. I told myself, you're fine, you're cool, you're precise. But the truth was, the man with the measure tape had just realized there are no exact dimensions for betrayal waiting to happen. You can measure a wall. You can calculate stress load. But you can't draft a blueprint for staying calm when your wife invites the ghost of relationships past to your house party. Still, I told myself I'd handle it. I'd host, smile, and be the architectural embodiment of chill. Because I'd made a promise, to her, to myself, and to the slightly judgmental smart system blinking softly in the corner. Aurora's lights glowed blue, almost like they knew what was coming. Machines, at least, understand structure. People, not so much. I turned off the lights, set down the tape, and whispered to the dark, All right, Marcus. Be cool. Be very, very cool. You ever had someone throw a grenade at your sanity and call it communication? That was Sophie that Tuesday. The woman had a PhD in casual chaos. Theo's coming to my birthday. Be cool or it's over, she'd said while clipping coupons for almond milk. No emotion. Just snip, snip, apocalypse. And like the idiot husband I am, I smiled and said, Sure, babe. Because when your marriage starts sounding like an HR warning, you go into survival mode. I wasn't ready to die on Coupon Hill. Not yet. I tried to rationalize. Maybe she just wanted to prove to herself that she was over him. That she could coexist with Theo, the man who once wrote her a song called Sophie's Soulfire, and uploaded it to SoundCloud like the world needed more acoustic regret. Or maybe she wanted me to prove something. My chill, my composure, my emotional growth. Translation: she wanted to see if I'd melt down in front of people holding mojitos. But I'm an architect. Meltdowns are for weak structures and soft concrete. I'd been reinforced by caffeine, mild resentment, and 2 decades of quiet childhood disappointment. Still, that night I sat at the kitchen counter, staring at the half-eaten lasagna she'd reheated, thinking about all the ways I could screw this up. Theo wasn't just an ex, he was the ex. The guy who bought her a Vespa in college and crashed it into a farmer's market. The guy who found himself backpacking in Thailand and came home with a man bun and a tattoo that said breathe. Sophie used to talk about him like he was a comet, brilliant, fast, and likely to cause a mess on impact. And now the comet was back in orbit. "Marcus, you're quiet," she said, sipping wine like it was a truth serum. "Just processing," I said. "Processing what?" "Geometry," I lied. "Right?" she said, smirking. "You're mad." "No," I said, "I'm calculating." She laughed and said, "You always think love is math." I smiled. "And you always think math is optional." She rolled her eyes. "Be cool, Marcus. It's just Theo." Just Theo. Like he was a harmless lab experiment instead of the human equivalent of a pop-up ad for poor decisions. I went to bed early, pretending I was fine. She stayed up watching Netflix with that faint smirk, the one she uses when she's planning chaos. I could practically hear her thinking, let's see if he can really handle this. Oh, I could handle it. But she wouldn't like the version of cool she was about to get. The next day at work, I told Ben, my best friend, office mate, and part-time therapist, about it. He dropped his pen like it was allergic to drama. "Wait," he said. "You're telling me your wife invited her ex to her birthday and told you to be cool or it's over?" "Bro, that's not an ultimatum. That's emotional CrossFit." "Yeah," I said, rubbing my temples. "I think I'm supposed to pass some kind of loyalty exam." "You sure she's not setting you up for an episode of Marriage? The deleted scenes?" "Feels like it," I said. Ben leaned back, smirking. "So, what's the plan, Mr. Architect? Build a bridge over your rage." "No," I said, sipping bad office coffee. "I'm going to host the best damn party she's ever seen. And I'm going to be calm. So calm it'll disturb her." "You're going to play psychological judo?" "Exactly," I said. "Use her chaos against her." Ben chuckled. "You're insane." "I'm married," I corrected. By Thursday, Sophie was in full party mode. Hair appointments, nails, texts flying like confetti. I overheard her talking to her friend Alana on speaker. "Yeah, he said he's fine with it. Totally calm. Like, weirdly calm." Alana laughed. "Girl, that's not calm. That's volcano energy." "Maybe," Sophie said, "but he'll be cool. I know him." I smiled from the hallway like a man who knew she didn't know me at all. That night, I came home to find her trying on dresses in front. Friday night arrived with the kind of pressure you can't see but can definitely smell, like fresh paint and emotional tension. I'd spent the last 48 hours pretending to be zen while secretly plotting social survival. Aurora, my smart home system and borderline child substitute, hummed softly in pre-party readiness. Lights, check. Music, check. Airflow calibrated for optimal mingling comfort. Everything was set. Even the scent diffuser was working overtime, pumping cedar calm through the vents like I was trying to seduce an entire forest. By 7 p.m., my living room looked like a modern art exhibit titled Overcompensation in beige. I stood there in my dark blue shirt, sleeves rolled, confidence faked, thinking, if she wanted proof I could be cool, I might as well win an Oscar for it. Sophie floated downstairs 20 minutes late, wearing that red dress again, the one that could start arguments in church parking lots. She looked stunning, and also armed. Her perfume hit the air before her voice did. "You ready?" she asked. "For what?" I said. "The party or the apocalypse." She smirked. Same difference. The doorbell rang like it had been waiting its whole life for drama. Guests trickled in. Ben showed up first, naturally. He was the kind of friend who knew when to bring snacks and when to bring sarcasm. He took one look at me and said, "You look like a man pretending he's not waiting for his wife's ex." "That's because I am," I said. "Help yourself to the bourbon before I start biting electrical cords." Next came Maya, Sophie's college friend, dressed like she had a podcast about astrology and bad decisions. "Oh my God, Marcus, this place looks amazing," she said. "It's so curated." "Thank you," I said, fighting the urge to bow. I used anxiety as my interior designer. The music was perfect, soft jazz giving way to indie pop, transitioning exactly on cue. Aurora was running smooth, like the obedient little algorithm it was. The guests laughed, clinked glasses, and complimented the lighting. "How do you make the ceiling glow like that?" someone asked. It's called emotional compensation through LED, I said. They laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. Then came Will, my coworker, the kind of guy who can't resist a dad joke. Man, this place looks like an HGTV fever dream, he said, handing me a bottle of whiskey. And I mean that in the best way. Thanks, I said. Wait till you see the synchronized candle sequence at dessert. You choreograph candles? Of course, I said. Doesn't everyone? The crowd thickened, and the vibe got louder. Sophie was glowing, laughing, greeting guests, taking selfies like she was running for office. She was in her element, adored, admired, and photographed. And for a while, I let myself believe we were okay. I was handing out drinks, playing host, cracking jokes. Ben was chatting up Maya. Will was telling some story about an HVAC disaster. And I, the man with the measure tape, was holding it together with duct-taped composure. Then, at exactly 9:07 p.m., because of course I checked, the doorbell rang again. The final guest. The one my stomach had been rehearsing for. Sophie's eyes flickered. Be cool, she mouthed. And like a well-trained robot, I smiled. Always, I said. I opened the door, and there he was, Theo. The myth. The legend. The walking cologne commercial. The guy had the audacity to look good. Crisp shirt, smug grin, hair doing that effortless, I just left a yacht thing. Marcus, he said, extending a hand. Man, it's been forever. Forever implies we've met more than once, I said, shaking his hand anyway. He laughed like I'd said something charming instead of slightly homicidal. Fair enough. Great setup you've got here. Thanks, I said. It's mostly steel, glass, and suppressed emotion. He handed me a bottle of red wine. Imported, expensive, and somehow passive-aggressive. Sophie appeared behind me, smile turned up to 11. Theo, she said, hugging him. And that hug lasted just a beat too long. I counted. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3. Too damn many Mississippis. I smiled like a man watching someone pet his dog without permission. Wow, you look amazing, Theo said to her. Red always was your color. Still is, she said. Marcus likes it too. I bet he does, Theo said. Sure, I replied. I love red. Especially when it's paired with restraint. Ben, standing behind me, coughed into his drink to hide a laugh. Theo strolled in like he'd been invited to the White House. He had that vibe of a guy who orders for everyone at restaurants and tips badly. He looked around, admiring my work. Man, this place is intense, he said. You always this detailed? Only when I care, I said. Then again, I've been told I overbuild things. Overbuild, he repeated. That's a good problem to have. Not if you're the one footing the bill, I said, smiling sharp enough to slice glass. Sophie introduced him around. Guests fawned. The room buzzed with the kind of energy that makes you want to check your blood pressure. I stayed near the bar, pretending to study drink ratios while actually timing interactions. Theo was charming in that I peaked at 28 way. He told travel stories, dropped humble brags like confetti, and laughed too loudly at his own jokes. At one point, I caught Sophie touching his arm lightly. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was choreography. Either way, I started stirring my drink like it owed me money. Maya sidled up next to me. So that's the infamous Theo, huh? Yup. He's tall. He's vertical, I said flatly. Impressive, huh? He's fine, she said, sipping her wine. But you? You're terrifyingly calm. It's unnerving. Good, I said. That's the goal. The night rolled on like a slow-motion parade of passive-aggressive smiles. At 9:45, the playlist shifted to the dance section. Sophie had requested it. Her moment. She grabbed Theo's hand to pull him toward the dance floor. He hesitated. I watched. Come on, she said. It's just one dance. The crowd cheered. Of course, they did. I sipped my bourbon, half human, half volcano. Then something remarkable happened. Aurora, sweet, loyal, AI Aurora. Misread the decibel spike as an argument cue. It dimmed the lights to serious mood and switched the music to Claire de Lune. The room went quiet. Sophie froze mid-laugh, Theo mid-step. And I might have smiled a little too wide. Oops, I said, tapping my phone. System glitch. Happens sometimes when it senses tension. There's no tension. Sophie snapped. Of course not, I said. My mistake. People laughed awkwardly. Theo chuckled. You're a funny guy, Marcus. I'm professionally ironic, I said. Sophie shot me a glare that could melt rebar. I raised my glass and toasted the crowd. To love, technology, and flawless communication. Ben groaned quietly behind me. By 10 p.m., I'd hit my personal limit for emotional endurance. Theo was still talking. Sophie was still glowing. And I was one jazz chord away from spontaneous combustion. But damn it, I was cool. Ice cold. Antarctica with dimmers. I caught Ben's eye across the room. He mouthed, "You good?" I nodded. "Totally fine," I mouthed back. And somehow, I meant it. Because deep down, I knew something Sophie didn't. Every structure can handle only so much load before the cracks start showing. And tonight, she'd just handed me the blueprint for hers. The candles flickered. The guests laughed. And I stood there in my perfectly lit, emotionally fragile living room, sipping bourbon and thinking, the calm before the storm really does have great lighting. There's a specific kind of silence that hits right before a disaster, like the world's holding its breath, waiting to see if you'll embarrass yourself publicly. That was the silence that wrapped around me the moment Theo walked through my front door, hugged my wife, and held on a beat too long. You know when you can actually hear a hug. The faint shuffle of clothes, the deep exhale, the subtle, "I've missed this" energy? Yeah, I heard that. And because I'm a gentleman raised on sarcasm and repressed fury, I smiled through it like a damn saint. "Hey, man, glad you could make it," I said, voice all honey and homicide. "She's all yours, man. I was just leaving." The words came out smoother than whiskey and twice as dangerous. Now, I didn't plan to say that. It wasn't in my script. The line just appeared, like divine intervention from the patron saint of petty husbands. I saw Sophie's face freeze, that practiced hostess smile twitching like a faulty neon sign. The entire room paused. It was like someone hit mute on life. Then came the tiny sounds of chaos. A glass clinked, someone coughed, a phone camera accidentally clicked. Ben's eyes went wide from across the room, mouthing, "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" I didn't answer. I was too busy zipping up my jacket like a man clocking out of an emotional factory. See, Sophie had told me to be cool. And I was. Just not the flavor she'd ordered. She meant compliant cool, the kind that smiles while dying inside. I chose thermodynamic cool, absolute zero. The kind of cool that freezes the air. I'd promised to be calm, and in that moment, calm looked like surrender with a smirk. Sophie blinked at me, her mascara trembling with rage. "Marcus, what are you doing?" she whispered. "Leaving," I said simply. "You said you wanted me to be cool. I'm being so cool. I'm literally stepping outside." Theo chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hey man, don't take off on our account." I turned to him, smiling like a man about to make a toast. "Theo, buddy, I'm not taking off. I'm giving you space. You've clearly been waiting for this reunion longer than I have." Gasps. Literal gasps. You could feel the oxygen leaving the room, replaced by the scent of awkwardness and cheap cologne. Ben looked like he wanted to tackle me. Maya, bless her gossipy soul, was already texting someone. Sophie's lips pressed into a line so tight it could cut glass. "Marcus," she said in that low, trembling voice women use before either forgiving or killing you. "This isn't funny." "No," I said, picking up my jacket from the chair, "but it's honest. I'm giving you what you wanted, me not ruining your night." And then I did it. I put on my jacket like a man in a slow-motion movie scene, every button click echoing through the room. I even took a second to smooth the collar. Theatrics matter. "You guys enjoy," I said, heading toward the door. Drinks are free, the playlist's automatic, and the thermostat has a better sense of boundaries than I do. Ben stood halfway up, whispering, "Dude, wait." "Nah," I said, "let her sparkle." Sophie followed me a few steps, heels clicking, voice trembling between anger and panic. "Marcus, don't you dare leave me with this." "With what?" I interrupted, turning back. "The consequence of your own chaos? Relax. I'm not storming off. I'm gracefully evacuating." "You're humiliating me," she hissed. "No, babe," I said, smiling gently. "I'm giving the audience what they came for, authenticity." Theo tried again, bless his overconfident soul. "Hey man, it's really not that serious. We're all adults here." "You're right," I said, stepping closer. "That's why I'm walking out instead of flipping the buffet table." He blinked, taken aback. "Okay, that's fair. Glad we agree," I said, patting his shoulder with the firm politeness of a man adjusting a painting slightly off-center. Then I turned back to the crowd, my guests, my curated chaos, and gave a short bow. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the evening. If anyone asks, tell them I finally learned how to let go. And with that, I left. The hallway outside was colder than I expected. My footsteps echoed, dramatic as hell, and honestly, it felt good. Not just good, liberating. Like unbuckling a seatbelt after a turbulence-filled flight. Inside, I could still hear muffled chatter, the low buzz of confusion, and Sophie's voice trying to salvage the night. I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. Twisted, dark, satisfying peace. In the lobby, I leaned against the wall, exhaling. Ben texted almost immediately. Bro, what the actual hell? I replied, being cool, remember? He sent back 3 dots. Then, you are either a genius or divorced by Monday. I smirked. Why not both? I sat there for a bit, jacket half-zipped, watching people come and go. Some tenants passed me, nodding politely. Rough night, one old man asked, holding his dog's leash. You could say that, I said. Anniversary gone wrong. Birthday, I replied. Always worse, he said, shuffling off. I gave him a mental fist bump. Wisdom recognizes wisdom. I checked Aurora's system from my phone. Everything still ran perfectly. Lights were pulsing in perfect sync. Music still flowing. The party would go on, until I decided it wouldn't. Because if you think I'd let my wife's ex dance under my lighting design, you don't know me. So I sat there, smirking, and thumbed a little line of code I'd written weeks ago as a joke. Quiet_mode.sh. A tap, a slide, and boom, Aurora began its silent protest. Inside, lights dimmed to funeral chic. Music hiccuped, faded, then died completely. What remained was awkward silence and LED white glare, every insecurity under a spotlight. I didn't have to be there to see it. I could imagine the scene like a cinematic masterpiece. Sophie fuming, Theo pretending to fix the vibe, guests making excuses to leave early. Art, really? My phone buzzed. Ben again. Dude, lights just went out. Did you? I texted back. System sensitive to tension. Must have overloaded. You're insane, he replied. You love it, I wrote. A little, he admitted. A few minutes later, another text, this one from Sophie. Marcus, turn it back on now. Then another. This isn't funny. And a third. People are leaving. I stared at the screen, chuckled, and replied, You said be cool. I'm cool. Ice cold. She didn't answer. Instead, Aurora sent me an alert. Manual override attempt detected. I imagined her mashing the buttons, probably yelling at Theo for touching things wrong. Which, let's be honest, was on brand. I leaned back in the chair, grinning at my phone like a villain in a rom-com. Sometimes revenge doesn't need yelling. It just needs silence, bad lighting, and a well-timed exit. I didn't slash tires or throw punches. I just pulled the plug literally. After 10 minutes of lobby peace, I stood up, stretched, and walked out into the cool night air. The city hummed quietly, the way it does when everyone else is busy pretending they're fine. I wasn't pretending. For the first time in months, I was fine. Sophie's be cool ultimatum had turned into my emancipation. I found a little corner bar 2 blocks away, one of those places with sticky floors and beer prices that feel like time travel. The bartender looked up. Rough night, he asked. Nah, I said, sliding onto a stool. Just cooling off. He poured me a whiskey like he'd seen this movie before. Celebrating or surviving? Both, I said. Ben called, voice low but laughing. You're trending in our friend group, he said. Half think you snapped, half think you ascended. Let's go with ascended, I said. What's the damage? Party's dead, he said. Theo tried to fix the vibe, which made it worse. Sophie's furious. Maya's live tweeting it. We'll stole your hummus. He deserves it, I said. He's been through enough PowerPoint meetings to earn that hummus. You're unbelievable, Ben said, chuckling. What now? Now, I said, raising my glass. Now I enjoy my masterpiece. You can't buy moments like this, Ben. You engineer them. He laughed again. You're gonna regret this tomorrow. Maybe, I said. But tonight, I'm free. Free and hydrated. I hung up, took another sip, and thought about the irony. Architects are trained to build things that last. But sometimes, demolition is the most beautiful part of the process. And as I sat there, whiskey in hand, the faint glow of my phone still lighting up with angry messages, I couldn't help but smile. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting to Sophie's chaos. I was redesigning it. When I walked out of that apartment, I thought I'd made a clean escape, like the protagonist in a heist movie who slides into the getaway car before the credits roll. But apparently, my movie had a post-credits scene, and it involved Sophie Lane Reed having a meltdown in 4K. I didn't see it firsthand, but thanks to the miracle of text messages, panicked voicemails, and Ben's live commentary, I got a front row seat anyway. Ben was my informant. Every 5 minutes, another update buzzed through my phone like dispatches from a sinking ship. She's trying to fix the lights. Then, Theo's touching your control panel. Bro followed by, never mind, he broke something. And then finally, everyone's pretending to help, but also slowly leaving. It's like the Titanic, but with Costco wine. I sat in the lobby, feet up on a coffee table, scrolling through the chaos with the satisfaction of a man watching karma arrive on time. The building's soft ambient lighting flickered faintly from my command app, my beautiful, slightly vengeful creation, Aurora. When I'd built the system, I never imagined it would one day serve as the world's most polite revenge weapon. Yet here we were, smart home, dumb guests, poetic justice. I could picture it perfectly. Sophie, the self-proclaimed queen of social grace, trapped under the unflattering glow of harsh LED white. Her friends whispering, her ex awkwardly holding a wine glass like a peace offering, and that weird AI voice chiming out from the ceiling. Aurora has entered safe mode. Safe for who? Definitely not for her reputation. And the guests? Oh, I knew how guests behave when a party dies. They start doing the polite vanish. You know that move? The one where someone says, "We really should get going." And suddenly 15 other people discover they also have places to be? One couple pretends to have a babysitter waiting. Another claims their parking meter's about to expire even though we all live in the same building. Within minutes, the room empties faster than a buffet after the shrimp runs out. By the time Ben came down to the lobby to join me, the night had turned into a slow-motion implosion. He sat beside me, still holding a half-full drink. "You're an evil genius," he said. "I just witnessed social homicide." I grinned. "Oh, I know. Tell me everything." He leaned back, shaking his head. "So, first, Theo tries to play hero. He walks over to your control tablet like he knows what he's doing. He's poking buttons, saying stuff like, "I do tech consulting sometimes." Bro didn't even find the power button. Aurora started flashing, and then the thermostat jumped from 72 to 68. It was like watching a frat boy try to defuse a bomb. I snorted into my drink. "And Sophie?" "Oh man," he said, laughing. "She's pacing. She keeps saying, 'Marcus must have done this.' And everyone's like, 'No, no, it's just a glitch.' But you can see it in her eyes. She knows." I raised my glass. "To beautiful inevitability." Ben clinked his cup against mine. "You really are something else, you know that?" Most guys would have yelled. "Thrown something." "You weaponized interior design." "Precision, my friend," I said. "Revenge is best served on a dimmer." He laughed so hard he spilled a little whiskey. "You're gonna regret this tomorrow." "Nah," I said. "Regret requires doubt. I have none left." My phone buzzed again. Sophie. Voicemail this time. I put it on speaker, because why not share the entertainment? "Marcus." Her voice snapped through the speaker, shaky but furious. "Turn it back on. You're acting like a child. People are leaving. You've embarrassed me." She took a breath. "You always do this. You make everything about control. You don't even know how to let go." I ended the message with a tap and said, "Well, she's half right." Ben chuckled. "You're enjoying this too much." "Ben," I said, leaning back, "I've been married 6 years. I've earned this one night of unholy satisfaction." Then, because poetic timing is a real thing, the building's elevator dinged, and out stepped none other than Sophie herself. Red dress, heels in hand, makeup perfect except for one streak down her cheek that said mascara met meltdown. "Oh, this is gonna be good," Ben muttered. She spotted me instantly. "Marcus," she snapped, striding over. "What did you do?" I looked up calmly. "I followed your instructions. I was cool." "Cool," she said, voice rising. "You hijacked the entire party." I shrugged. "No, the party hijacked itself. I just rebalanced the power grid." She threw her hands up. "You're impossible. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Even Theo said it was childish." "Well," I said, finishing my drink, "if Theo's the moral compass, I think we're all lost." "Marcus," she hissed. You made me look insane. Oh, sweetheart, I said. You didn't need my help for that. Ben snorted so loud he had to pretend to cough. Sophie shot him a death glare. Do you mind? She said. Not at all, he said, raising his glass. I live for this kind of theater. She turned back to me, shaking her head. You're pathetic. You think this is funny. I stood, buttoning my jacket again for dramatic effect. Funny? No. Hilarious? Absolutely. She stepped closer. You think you've won something? No, I said. Winning would imply there was still a game. This is just credits rolling. That one landed. She froze, eyes blinking rapidly, like her brain was buffering. You're leaving me? She whispered. I sighed. Sophie, you told me to be cool, or it's over. I chose cool. Congratulations, we both got what we wanted. For a second, she looked like she might cry. Then she did that thing she always does, straightened her shoulders, and switched to performance mode. Fine, she said. If you want to walk away, walk away. Don't expect me to chase you. I won't, I said. Running shoes aren't my aesthetic. She stared at me for a beat, then spun on her heel and stormed out of the lobby, muttering something about emotional robots and therapy. Ben waited until the doors slammed shut before saying, You're really not going after her, huh? Nope. You sure? Ben, I built an entire smart home just to avoid surprises. I'm sure. He nodded slowly, sipping the last of his drink. Man, you just turned your marriage into a TED Talk on boundaries. Good, I said. Maybe I'll finally get an audience that listens. We sat there in silence for a bit, watching the building's reflection in the glass doors. The rain started, light at first, then steady. Somewhere above us, Aurora hummed quietly, back in standby mode. It was almost peaceful. Ben finally said, So what now? Now, I said, I go upstairs, grab my essentials, and check into a hotel. She can have the apartment for the night. Call it my final act of generosity. He nodded. You want me to come with? I smiled. Nah, go home to your wife. Tell her you witnessed a man finally get his PhD in detachment. Ben laughed, clapped my shoulder, and left. I waited a few more minutes before heading back upstairs. The hallway was quiet, eerily so. I opened the door to the apartment, and wow, it looked like a battlefield between pride and chaos. Half-empty wine glasses on every surface, balloons sagging in defeat, the faint smell of burned hors d'oeuvres hanging in the air. Aurora's voice chimed softly as I entered. Welcome back, Marcus. Would you like to resume party mode? No, I said. Let's retire party mode forever. Understood, it replied. I walked through the wreckage, surveying the remains. Sophie's friends had left their purses, scarves, and one lonely stiletto behind, like survivors fleeing a sinking cruise ship. On the counter sat the bottle of red wine Theo brought, unopened. Typical. Even his gifts were performative. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Theo himself. Hey man, no hard feelings. She was really upset. You two should talk. I stared at it for a full minute, then replied, Appreciate the concern. Maybe next time, stick to hugging your own date. He didn't answer. I started packing my essentials. Laptop, chargers, toiletries, a few shirts. The important stuff. As I zipped the bag, I noticed something on the counter, a birthday card. Not from me. The handwriting was too loopy, too sentimental. Inside, it said, You'll always be the spark that started my fire. Love, T. Of course. Theo had brought a card. Who the hell brings a love note to a married woman's birthday party? My first instinct was to tear it in half. My second was to frame it as evidence in future therapy. Instead, I left it right there on the counter. Let it sit like the rotten cherry on top of a melting sundae. Before I left, I poured myself one last drink from the bar cart, the bourbon I'd saved for the toast that never happened. I raised the glass toward the ceiling camera. Aurora, I said, play something for the end. Playlist selection? The AI asked. Anything poetic. A beat of silence, then the soft instrumental of Frank Sinatra's That's Life filled the empty room. I laughed out loud. Perfect. I sipped, looked around, and whispered, You did good, Marcus. You stayed cool. Walking out for the second time that night felt different. Earlier, it was defiance. Now, it was closure. No anger. No adrenaline. Just the sweet satisfaction of a man who finally realized that sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. I locked the door behind me, headed for the elevator, and didn't look back. The next morning, Ben texted me again. Newsflash, Theo left at midnight. Sophie's crying to her mom, and half the guests are gossiping in a group chat called That Party Though. You're basically a legend. I sent him a thumbs up emoji. Then, for good measure, a coffee cup. Because legends, apparently, need caffeine. Sitting in the hotel lobby, I replayed the night in my head. Every scene, every petty line, every small victory. And weirdly, I didn't feel proud or ashamed. I just felt done. Like a man who'd finally stopped trying to build a skyscraper out of someone else's chaos. Maybe the party lost power that night. But me? I finally switched mine back on. The morning after the great power outage of Sophie's birthday bash, my phone looked like it had survived a digital riot. 43 text messages, 12 missed calls, and an assortment of emojis that read like emotional Morse code. If drama had a font, it'd be bold, red, and all caps, and Sophie used every variation. My favorite message was time-stamped 2:14 a.m. You are cruel, you manipulative architect of misery. To which I replied at 6:03 a.m. Technically, yes. Architect is my profession. The silence after that was delicious. By 9 a.m., the text had shifted tone, from furious to tragic. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then, you humiliated Theo. Good. You made me look insane. Unnecessary effort on my part. Do you even care about what we had? Depends on the blueprint. Then the piece de resistance. I can't believe you weaponized a thermostat. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on my shirt. The phrase, weaponized a thermostat, should have come with a copyright. I didn't reply again, not because I didn't want to, but because I had entered the most peaceful state known to man, postmarital apathy. That serene, untouchable calm where someone's rage bounces off you like hail on a steel roof. The kind of peace monks envy. Around 11 a.m., I decided to check in on Aurora's diagnostics because, well, engineers cope through maintenance. The system report said everything was fine. Party mode, completed. Emotional fallout, undetermined. Even my AI had learned sarcasm by proximity. Then came a call from Sophie's mom, Daria. The woman had the energy of a talk show host and the subtlety of an air horn. Marcus, honey, she began, voice dripping with guilt weapon butter. What did you do last night? I enforced silence, I said simply. I heard you shut the power off during her party. I shut the vibe off, I corrected. The power was just collateral damage. She sighed dramatically. You're both being ridiculous. You need to apologize. Why? Because marriage isn't about winning. No, I said. But it's definitely about not losing to Theo. She gasped like I'd used profanity in a church. That's not funny. Neither is hosting your ex in your marital home, I said, leaning back. But here we are. Daria muttered something about pride and immaturity, which I mentally translated to you hurt my daughter's ego. I let her monologue until she ran out of parental fuel. Marcus, she finally said, if you keep acting like this, she's going to do something drastic. Like what? Invite another ex to brunch. Click. She hung up. I took a long sip of coffee and muttered, worth it. The rest of the day unfolded like an experimental therapy session in detachment. I worked remotely from the hotel lounge, sketching designs for a mid-century office renovation. My brain was happy. Lines, proportions, symmetry, order. Unlike my marriage, blueprints never gaslight you. At 3 p.m., Ben showed up uninvited, which meant he was worried or bored. He plopped down beside me, holding 2 coffees. You look too calm, he said. That's suspicious. I'm fine, I said. No one who says I'm fine in that tone is fine. I shrugged. I'm adjusting. He sipped his coffee. So she's blowing up your phone? Like a fireworks finale. And you're just ignoring it? Yep. Bold. Therapeutic. He leaned in. You realize this isn't over, right? She's gonna escalate. I chuckled. Ben, the only thing she can escalate at this point is her own imagination. You say that now, he said. But chaos loves company. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Sophie again. New message. I'm coming over. Ben grinned. Chaos RSVP'd. I stared at the text. Then typed. Not a good idea. She replied instantly. You can't stop me. I typed back. Aurora can. Ben snorted coffee out his nose. You're diabolical. Thank you, I said. I try. An hour later, the universe tested my patience. Sophie showed up at the hotel lobby, wearing oversized sunglasses like a celebrity who'd just been canceled. She marched toward me like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. "We're talking," she declared. I gestured to the chair. "Proceed, Your Honor." She sat down with a sigh. "You think this is funny, don't you? I think it's poetic. You humiliated me. Correction. You hosted your ex at our home and humiliated yourself. I just provided lighting." "God, you're impossible," she groaned. "Why do you always need to be right?" "It's not about being right," I said. "It's about refusing to be wronged in surround sound." She blinked, thrown off by my calm. "You've lost your mind." "No," I said. "I've found my peace." "Peace?" she scoffed. "You're sleeping in a hotel, Marcus." "Exactly," I said, sipping my drink. "Peace is a king-sized bed with no passive-aggressive snoring beside it." Her jaw dropped. "I can't believe you just said that." "I can't believe I didn't say it sooner." She shook her head, exhaling sharply. "So that's it. You're done. I'm done being the project manager of your drama. You think you're perfect?" "Oh no," I said. "I'm insufferable, but at least I'm consistent." For a second, she didn't say anything. Her eyes softened, just slightly. "I didn't invite Theo to hurt you," she said quietly. "I just wanted to prove we could all be adults." I tilted my head. "You invited your ex who once proposed to you in a Chili's parking lot. That's not adulthood. That's nostalgia with bad lighting." She blinked back tears. "You make everything sound so cold." "That's because you confuse warmth with chaos," I said gently. "You think noise means life. I think silence means peace." She stared at me for a long time. "You really don't love me anymore, do you?" "I love you," I said. "I just stopped volunteering for the circus." The tears finally fell. And damn it, part of me wanted to reach across and comfort her. But the logical part reminded me that empathy was how this cycle restarted. So I sat still. I let her cry. After a while, she sniffed and said, "You're heartless." I smiled sadly. "No, Sophie. I just stopped letting you set the temperature." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, leaning forward, "for years, you controlled the emotional thermostat in this marriage. You decided when we were warm, when we were cold, when we boiled. Last night, I finally realized I could just turn the damn thing off." She looked away. "You're proud of that?" "I'm relieved." Her voice cracked. "So what, that's it? You want a divorce?" "I want my peace," I said. "If divorce is the invoice, I'll pay it." She stood abruptly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll regret it in quiet." She stormed off, heels clicking across the marble floor. People stared. I didn't care. I just sat there, breathing. Ben texted 2 minutes later. "She's gone." "Gone," I replied. "You okay?" "Better than the thermostat." That night, alone in the hotel room, I poured myself a drink and thought about her words. Heartless. Maybe she was right. But when you've spent years managing someone else's chaos, sometimes detachment feels like freedom, not cruelty. I picked up my phone and, for the first time all day, opened Aurora's app. The system's mood log still showed last night's chaos metrics, spikes in volume, temperature fluctuations, lighting anomalies. But under it, one line stood out. User override detected. Emotional climate stabilization. I laughed quietly. Even the algorithm was rooting for me. Still, there was a flicker of guilt. Sophie wasn't evil. She was just built for drama, and I was built for design. She saw life in fireworks. I saw it in floor plans. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building together. I just kept maintaining while she kept redecorating. At midnight, I texted her one last time. "We should talk." Calmly. No reply. Fair enough. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and went home, not to reconcile, but to gather my things. The apartment was quiet, but not peaceful. It smelled like perfume and resentment. The counter was still covered in party debris, half-eaten cupcakes, a tipped-over champagne flute, and one lonely balloon clinging to the ceiling like a ghost of bad decisions. Aurora greeted me softly. "Welcome home, Marcus." Emotional readings, moderate tension detected. "Good eye," I said. There was a note on the table in Sophie's handwriting. "We need space. Don't contact me for a few days." Underneath it, she'd drawn a tiny red heart. "Old habits die hard." I smiled, folded the note, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then, for no reason at all, I said to Aurora, "Set temperature to 72. "Would you like me to engage thermostat diplomacy?" it asked. I froze, laughing. "You remember that command?" "Affirmative. Thermostat diplomacy protocol." Emotional balance through incremental temperature shifts. Activated, I said, smiling. Engaged, it replied. The vents whispered softly, warm air spreading through the room. Gentle, steady, forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt balance return. Not from Sophie, not from revenge, but from reclaiming control of my own atmosphere. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't win the war by burning bridges. You win it by adjusting the temperature until the other side realizes they were never built for the heat. The morning after the great power outage of Sophie's birthday bash, my phone looked like it had survived a digital riot. 43 text messages, 12 missed calls, and an assortment of emojis that read like emotional Morse code. If drama had a font, it'd be bold, red, and all caps, and Sophie used every variation. My favorite message was time-stamped 2:14 a.m. You are cruel, you manipulative architect of misery. To which I replied at 6:03 a.m. Technically, yes, architect is my profession. The silence after that was delicious. By 9 a.m., the text had shifted tone, from furious to tragic. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then, you humiliated Theo. Good. You made me look insane. Unnecessary effort on my part. Do you even care about what we had? Depends on the blueprint. Then the piece de resistance. I can't believe you weaponized a thermostat. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on my shirt. The phrase, weaponized a thermostat, should have come with a copyright. I didn't reply again, not because I didn't want to, but because I had entered the most peaceful state known to man, postmarital apathy. That serene, untouchable calm where someone's rage bounces off you like hail on a steel roof. The kind of peace monks envy. Around 11 a.m., I decided to check in on Aurora's diagnostics because, well, engineers cope through maintenance. The system report said everything was fine. Party mode, completed. Emotional fallout, undetermined. Even my AI had learned sarcasm by proximity. Then came a call from Sophie's mom, Daria. The woman had the energy of a talk show host and the subtlety of an air horn. Marcus, honey, she began, voice dripping with guilt weapon butter. What did you do last night? I enforced silence, I said simply. I heard you shut the power off during her party. I shut the vibe off, I corrected. The power was just collateral damage. She sighed dramatically. You're both being ridiculous. You need to apologize. Why? Because marriage isn't about winning. No, I said, but it's definitely about not losing to Theo. She gasped like I'd used profanity in a church. That's not funny. Neither is hosting your ex in your marital home, I said, leaning back. But here we are. Daria muttered something about pride and immaturity, which I mentally translated to you hurt my daughter's ego. I let her monologue until she ran out of parental fuel. Marcus, she finally said, if you keep acting like this, she's going to do something drastic. Like what? Invite another ex to brunch. Click. She hung up. I took a long sip of coffee and muttered, worth it. The rest of the day unfolded like an experimental therapy session in detachment. I worked remotely from the hotel lounge, sketching designs for a mid-century office renovation. My brain was happy. Lines, proportions, symmetry, order. Unlike my marriage, blueprints never gaslight you. At 3 p.m., Ben showed up uninvited, which meant he was worried or bored. He plopped down beside me, holding 2 coffees. You look too calm, he said. That's suspicious. I'm fine, I said. No one who says I'm fine in that tone is fine. I shrugged. I'm adjusting. He sipped his coffee. So she's blowing up your phone? Like a fireworks finale. And you're just ignoring it? Yep. Bold. Therapeutic. He leaned in. You realize this isn't over, right? She's gonna escalate. I chuckled. Ben, the only thing she can escalate at this point is her own imagination. You say that now, he said. But chaos loves company. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Sophie again. New message. I'm coming over. Ben grinned. Chaos RSVP'd. I stared at the text. Then typed. Not a good idea. She replied instantly. You can't stop me. I typed back. Aurora can. Ben snorted coffee out his nose. You're diabolical. Thank you, I said. I try. An hour later, the universe tested my patience. Sophie showed up at the hotel lobby, wearing oversized sunglasses like a celebrity who'd just been canceled. She marched toward me like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. We're talking, she declared. I gestured to the chair. Proceed, Your Honor. She sat down with a sigh. You think this is funny, don't you? I think it's poetic. You humiliated me. Correction. You hosted your ex at our home and humiliated yourself. I just provided lighting. God, you're impossible, she groaned. Why do you always need to be right? It's not about being right, I said. It's about refusing to be wronged in surround sound. She blinked, thrown off by my calm. You've lost your mind. No, I said. I've found my peace. Peace, she scoffed. You're sleeping in a hotel, Marcus. Exactly, I said, sipping my drink. Peace is a king-sized bed with no passive-aggressive snoring beside it. Her jaw dropped. I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe I didn't say it sooner. She shook her head, exhaling sharply. So that's it. You're done. I'm done being the project manager of your drama. You think you're perfect? Oh no, I said. I'm insufferable, but at least I'm consistent. For a second, she didn't say anything. Her eyes softened, just slightly. I didn't invite Theo to hurt you, she said quietly. I just wanted to prove we could all be adults. I tilted my head. You invited your ex who once proposed to you in a Chili's parking lot. That's not adulthood. That's nostalgia with bad lighting. She blinked back tears. You make everything sound so cold. That's because you confuse warmth with chaos, I said gently. You think noise means life. I think silence means peace. She stared at me for a long time. You really don't love me anymore, do you? I love you, I said. I just stopped volunteering for the circus. The tears finally fell. And damn it, part of me wanted to reach across and comfort her. But the logical part reminded me that empathy was how this cycle restarted. So I sat still. I let her cry. After a while, she sniffed and said, You're heartless. I smiled sadly. No, Sophie. I just stopped letting you set the temperature. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, leaning forward. For years, you controlled the emotional thermostat in this marriage. You decided when we were warm, when we were cold, when we boiled. Last night, I finally realized I could just turn the damn thing off. She looked away. You're proud of that. I'm relieved. Her voice cracked. So what, that's it? You want a divorce? I want my peace, I said. If divorce is the invoice, I'll pay it. She stood abruptly, tears streaking down her cheeks. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but I'll regret it in quiet. She stormed off, heels clicking across the marble floor. People stared. I didn't care. I just sat there, breathing. Ben texted 2 minutes later. She's gone. Gone, I replied. You okay? Better than the thermostat. That night, alone in the hotel room, I poured myself a drink and thought about her words. Heartless. Maybe she was right. But when you've spent years managing someone else's chaos, sometimes detachment feels like freedom, not cruelty. I picked up my phone and, for the first time all day, opened Aurora's app. The system's mood log still showed last night's chaos metrics, spikes in volume, temperature fluctuations, lighting anomalies. But under it, one line stood out. User override detected. Emotional climate stabilization. I laughed quietly. Even the algorithm was rooting for me. Still, there was a flicker of guilt. Sophie wasn't evil. She was just built for drama, and I was built for design. She saw life in fireworks. I saw it in floor plans. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building together. I just kept maintaining while she kept redecorating. At midnight, I texted her one last time. We should talk. Calmly. No reply. Fair enough. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and went home, not to reconcile, but to gather my things. The apartment was quiet, but not peaceful. It smelled like perfume and resentment. The counter was still covered in party debris, half-eaten cupcakes, a tipped-over champagne flute, and one lonely balloon clinging to the ceiling like a ghost of bad decisions. Aurora greeted me softly. Welcome home, Marcus. Emotional readings, moderate tension detected. Good eye, I said. There was a note on the table in Sophie's handwriting. We need space. Don't contact me for a few days. Underneath it, she'd drawn a tiny red heart. Old habits die hard. I smiled, folded the note, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then, for no reason at all, I said to Aurora, set temperature to 72. Would you like me to engage thermostat diplomacy? It asked. I froze, laughing. You remember that command? Affirmative. Thermostat diplomacy protocol. Emotional balance through incremental temperature shifts. Activated, I said, smiling. Engaged, it replied. The vents whispered softly, warm air spreading through the room. Gentle, steady, forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt balance return. Not from Sophie, not from revenge, but from reclaiming control of my own atmosphere. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't win the war by burning bridges. You win it by adjusting the temperature until the other side realizes they were never built for the heat. The morning after the great power outage of Sophie's birthday bash, my phone looked like it had survived a digital riot. 43 text messages, 12 missed calls, and an assortment of emojis that read like emotional Morse code. If drama had a font, it'd be bold, red, and all caps, and Sophie used every variation. My favorite message was time-stamped 2:14 a.m. You are cruel, you manipulative architect of misery. To which I replied at 6:03 a.m. Technically, yes, architect is my profession. The silence after that was delicious. By 9 a.m., the text had shifted tone, from furious to tragic. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then, you humiliated Theo. Good. You made me look insane. Unnecessary effort on my part. Do you even care about what we had? Depends on the blueprint. Then the piece de resistance. I can't believe you weaponized a thermostat. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on my shirt. The phrase, weaponized a thermostat, should have come with a copyright. I didn't reply again, not because I didn't want to, but because I had entered the most peaceful state known to man, postmarital apathy. That serene, untouchable calm where someone's rage bounces off you like hail on a steel roof. The kind of peace monks envy. Around 11 a.m., I decided to check in on Aurora's diagnostics because, well, engineers cope through maintenance. The system report said everything was fine. Party mode, completed. Emotional fallout, undetermined. Even my AI had learned sarcasm by proximity. Then came a call from Sophie's mom, Daria. The woman had the energy of a talk show host and the subtlety of an air horn. Marcus, honey, she began, voice dripping with guilt weapon butter. What did you do last night? I enforced silence, I said simply. I heard you shut the power off during her party. I shut the vibe off, I corrected. The power was just collateral damage. She sighed dramatically. You're both being ridiculous. You need to apologize. Why? Because marriage isn't about winning. No, I said, but it's definitely about not losing to Theo. She gasped like I'd used profanity in a church. That's not funny. Neither is hosting your ex in your marital home, I said, leaning back. But here we are. Daria muttered something about pride and immaturity, which I mentally translated to you hurt my daughter's ego. I let her monologue until she ran out of parental fuel. Marcus, she finally said, if you keep acting like this, she's going to do something drastic. Like what? Invite another ex to brunch. Click. She hung up. I took a long sip of coffee and muttered, worth it. The rest of the day unfolded like an experimental therapy session in detachment. I worked remotely from the hotel lounge, sketching designs for a mid-century office renovation. My brain was happy. Lines, proportions, symmetry, order. Unlike my marriage, blueprints never gaslight you. At 3 p.m., Ben showed up uninvited, which meant he was worried or bored. He plopped down beside me, holding 2 coffees. You look too calm, he said. That's suspicious. I'm fine, I said. No one who says, I'm fine in that tone is fine. I shrugged. I'm adjusting. He sipped his coffee. So she's blowing up your phone? Like a fireworks finale. And you're just ignoring it? Yep. Bold. Therapeutic. He leaned in. You realize this isn't over, right? She's gonna escalate. I chuckled. Ben, the only thing she can escalate at this point is her own imagination. You say that now, he said. But chaos loves company. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Sophie again. New message. I'm coming over. Ben grinned. Chaos RSVP'd. I stared at the text. Then typed. Not a good idea. She replied instantly. You can't stop me. I typed back. Aurora can. Ben snorted coffee out his nose. You're diabolical. Thank you, I said. I try. An hour later, the universe tested my patience. Sophie showed up at the hotel lobby, wearing oversized sunglasses like a celebrity who'd just been canceled. She marched toward me like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. We're talking, she declared. I gestured to the chair. Proceed, Your Honor. She sat down with a sigh. You think this is funny, don't you? I think it's poetic. You humiliated me. Correction. You hosted your ex at our home and humiliated yourself. I just provided lighting. God, you're impossible, she groaned. Why do you always need to be right? It's not about being right, I said. It's about refusing to be wronged in surround sound. She blinked, thrown off by my calm. You've lost your mind. No, I said. I've found my peace. Peace, she scoffed. You're sleeping in a hotel, Marcus. Exactly, I said, sipping my drink. Peace is a king-sized bed with no passive-aggressive snoring beside it. Her jaw dropped. I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe I didn't say it sooner. She shook her head, exhaling sharply. So that's it. You're done. I'm done being the project manager of your drama. You think you're perfect? Oh no, I said. I'm insufferable, but at least I'm consistent. For a second, she didn't say anything. Her eyes softened, just slightly. I didn't invite Theo to hurt you, she said quietly. I just wanted to prove we could all be adults. I tilted my head. You invited your ex who once proposed to you in a Chili's parking lot. That's not adulthood. That's nostalgia with bad lighting. She blinked back tears. You make everything sound so cold. That's because you confuse warmth with chaos, I said gently. You think noise means life. I think silence means peace. She stared at me for a long time. You really don't love me anymore, do you? I love you, I said. I just stopped volunteering for the circus. The tears finally fell. And damn it, part of me wanted to reach across and comfort her. But the logical part reminded me that empathy was how this cycle restarted. So I sat still. I let her cry. After a while, she sniffed and said, You're heartless. I smiled sadly. No, Sophie. I just stopped letting you set the temperature. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, leaning forward. For years, you controlled the emotional thermostat in this marriage. You decided when we were warm, when we were cold, when we boiled. Last night, I finally realized I could just turn the damn thing off. She looked away. You're proud of that. I'm relieved. Her voice cracked. So what, that's it? You want a divorce? I want my peace, I said. If divorce is the invoice, I'll pay it. She stood abruptly, tears streaking down her cheeks. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but I'll regret it in quiet. She stormed off, heels clicking across the marble floor. People stared. I didn't care. I just sat there, breathing. Ben texted 2 minutes later. She's gone. Gone, I replied. You okay? Better than the thermostat. That night, alone in the hotel room, I poured myself a drink and thought about her words. Heartless. Maybe she was right. But when you've spent years managing someone else's chaos, sometimes detachment feels like freedom, not cruelty. I picked up my phone and, for the first time all day, opened Aurora's app. The system's mood log still showed last night's chaos metrics, spikes in volume, temperature fluctuations, lighting anomalies. But under it, one line stood out. User override detected. Emotional climate stabilization. I laughed quietly. Even the algorithm was rooting for me. Still, there was a flicker of guilt. Sophie wasn't evil. She was just built for drama, and I was built for design. She saw life in fireworks. I saw it in floor plans. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building together. I just kept maintaining while she kept redecorating. At midnight, I texted her one last time. We should talk. Calmly. No reply. Fair enough. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and went home, not to reconcile, but to gather my things. The apartment was quiet, but not peaceful. It smelled like perfume and resentment. The counter was still covered in party debris, half-eaten cupcakes, a tipped-over champagne flute, and one lonely balloon clinging to the ceiling like a ghost of bad decisions. Aurora greeted me softly. Welcome home, Marcus. Emotional readings, moderate tension detected. Good eye, I said. There was a note on the table in Sophie's handwriting. We need space. Don't contact me for a few days. Underneath it, she'd drawn a tiny red heart. Old habits die hard. I smiled, folded the note, and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then, for no reason at all, I said to Aurora, set temperature to 72. Would you like me to engage thermostat diplomacy? It asked. I froze, laughing. You remember that command? Affirmative. Thermostat diplomacy protocol. Emotional balance through incremental temperature shifts. Activated, I said, smiling. Engaged, it replied. The vents whispered softly, warm air spreading through the room. gentle, steady, forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt balance return, not from Sophie, not from revenge, but from reclaiming control of my own atmosphere. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't win the war by burning bridges. You win it by adjusting the temperature until the other side realizes they were never built for the heat. I've learned two things about heartbreak. One, it's quieter than people think, and two, nothing heals you faster than a printer spitting out legal forms. I woke up that Monday morning feeling like a man who'd survived a particularly bad hurricane. House still standing, but every chair crooked. Sophie hadn't texted in 2 days. Not "I miss you." Not "let's talk." Just radio silence. Which, frankly, was a miracle. I half expected her to send a singing telegram demanding closure. So, like any responsible adult processing emotional carnage, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and Googled how to file a notice to quit for joint tenants who think they own your soul. The internet, bless its pragmatic heart, delivered a checklist, a template, and the comforting realization that bureaucracy loves no one. Filling out those forms was oddly therapeutic. Line by line, date by date, my brain rewired itself from heartbreak to logistics. Address? Check. Leaseholder name? Mine. Reason for notice? Personal separation and tenancy revocation. Translation: you don't get to live rent-free in my emotional or physical square footage. The ink glided across the page like freedom wearing cologne. Ben called mid-form. "You sound weirdly upbeat for a guy filing a breakup eviction." "Because I'm not crying," I said. "I'm notarizing." He whistled. "That's darkly poetic." Everything's poetic when you're done being gaslit. So what's the plan? Serve her legally. Retrieve my stuff. Begin a new chapter titled, "The Man Who Finally Read the Fine Print." You really gonna go through with it? "Ben," I said, "if she can invite Theo to my house, I can invite a process server to hers." The server I hired was a man named Todd, mid-40s, bald, the kind of guy who looked like he'd seen it all and still showed up early. He had this dry humor that felt like a mirror of mine. "You sure about this, pal?" he asked, flipping through the paperwork. "I've never been sure," I said. "You'd be surprised how often people change their minds halfway." "Not this guy," I said, tapping my chest. "This guy has receipts, backup copies, and a new hobby called peace." He nodded. "Respect. Most folks get emotional. You're cold as marble." "Architect," I said. "We like our structures stable." He smirked. "All right then, let's build you some closure." When he showed up at the apartment to serve Sophie, I stayed parked across the street, watching like a man auditing his own past. Todd walked up the steps, calm as ever, and knocked. She answered in a robe, hair in that messy bun she only wore when she was equal parts furious and unbothered. I couldn't hear the exchange, but I could see it. Her jaw tightening, the paper trembling in her hand, the slight stomp of her bare foot that said, "How dare you turn consequences into a postal delivery?" Todd came back, dusting off his hands like he'd just changed a tire. "She signed," he said. "Signed? Yeah. Right next to acknowledged receipt. She even underlined your name for emphasis." "That tracks," I said. "You want me to file the affidavit of service today?" "Absolutely. File it with gusto." He grinned. "You're one chill dude, Marcus. I like your style." "Thanks," I said. "I'm running on caffeine and detachment." That night, I went home, not to stay, but to take inventory. I'd learned something valuable from that party debacle. Possession is 9/10 of survival. I wanted my things out before emotions turned into demolition tools. The apartment was oddly quiet. Aurora's sensors greeted me with a soft chime. "Welcome home, Marcus." Environmental tension elevated. "Noted," I muttered. I moved through the space like a ghost checking for haunting rights. My drafting desk, still there. My espresso machine, safe. My toolbox, missing. Classic. I found it later in the hallway closet under a pile of her yoga mats. Symbolic, really. Strength and structure buried under flexibility. Sophie emerged from the bedroom as I was unplugging my monitor. "So it's true," she said flatly. "You actually sent a process server. Consider it closure with a signature. You're unbelievable. I get that a lot lately." She crossed her arms. "You didn't even give me a chance to talk." "You had 6 years," I said, "and an entire birthday party." "That was one night." "It was a thesis," I replied. She looked at the half-packed boxes. "So what? You're just moving out." "I'm moving on. You can't just erase me, Marcus." I paused, looking up at her. I'm not erasing you. I'm just removing you from the blueprints. The structure stands. You just don't get to live in it anymore. She laughed bitterly. You think you're so composed, don't you? Like this is all just business to you. It is, I said. Business with emotional zoning laws. Her voice cracked. I loved you, you know. I nodded slowly. And I believe you did. But love without respect is like a roof without support beams. It collapses under pressure. She wiped her eyes. You're quoting yourself now. Professionally, I said. She glared, stormed off, and slammed the door to the bedroom. Our bedroom, technically, though the word our was now pending legal review. Ben arrived 15 minutes later, carrying takeout and sarcasm. You sure this isn't an elaborate art installation? He asked, setting down the bags. Because it's giving divorce chic. I prefer mid-century detachment, I said, taping a box. He whistled low. Man, this is intense. Yeah, but it's progress. What's the next step? File notice, retrieve property, emotional bankruptcy. He grinned. And after that, therapy, bourbon, and possibly a houseplant. Sophie's voice called faintly from the bedroom. Ben, tell your friend he's insane. Ben looked at me. You want me to? Tell her the truth, I said. He raised his voice. He's not insane. He's architecting closure. She screamed back. That's not a thing. Ben shrugged. Guess it is now. After he left, I kept working. Packing can be spiritual if you do it right. Every object you touch asks you a question. Do I still serve a purpose? Or am I just emotional clutter? By midnight, I'd answered every question with ruthless efficiency. Before leaving, I did something uncharacteristic. I took one last walk through the apartment. I paused in each room, like saying goodbye to an old friend who'd been slowly turning into an enemy. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her perfume and burned toast. The living room held ghosts of laughter that now sounded rehearsed. The bedroom, well, let's just say the mattress was now a museum of misplaced loyalty. As I passed the thermostat, I couldn't resist one last act of symbolic revenge. Aurora, I said, set temperature to 62. Warning, it replied. This may cause discomfort. Exactly. The vents hummed, the air turned crisp, and I smiled. Goodbye, Sophie. I left that night feeling lighter. I'd taken the first step in reclaiming my peace, and it came with legally binding paperwork. There's something oddly empowering about choosing to be the adult in the breakup, even if you're the sarcastic kind of adult who jokes through the pain. The next morning, Sophie tried to retaliate. She called the building manager, claiming I'd abandoned the lease. Luckily, I'd anticipated that move. I sent him the notice to quit, copies of the payment receipts, and a polite reminder that my name alone was on the lease. He emailed back, all good. You're covered. Checkmate. But because the universe loves irony, Sophie wasn't done. She called me that evening, voice trembling with righteous fury. You're not going to make me look like the bad guy, she shouted. You don't need my help for that, I said. I'm serious, Marcus. I'll tell everyone you were abusive. Abusive? I repeated, genuinely stunned. Sophie, the most aggressive thing I've done this year is alphabetize the spice rack. You think this is a joke? She snapped. No, I said softly. I think it's the final act. She hung up, of course. That was her signature move. But this time, instead of shaking, I laughed. A full, stupid, liberating laugh that startled even me. Because I realized that's what happens when the person who once terrified you emotionally finally loses their power. They start performing for an audience that's left the theater. The next day, I met Todd again to finalize the filing. He looked up from his clipboard. Everything's official. 30-day countdown starts now. Perfect, I said. Feels weird, doesn't it? Turning love into paperwork. Yeah, I said. But at least the paperwork listens. When I got home, I found a single sticky note taped to the door. Sophie's handwriting again. You'll regret making me your enemy. I peeled it off, stuck it on my fridge, and wrote underneath, already did. Now I'm making you my past. That night, I sat in the half-empty apartment with a beer, the sound of the city humming through the vents. For the first time in months, I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll old texts or reread fights disguised as conversations. I just sat there, breathing in the kind of silence that doesn't feel lonely, it feels earned. Because sometimes peace doesn't arrive as forgiveness. Sometimes it arrives as a notice, stamped, filed, and perfectly formatted. And if that's not closure, I don't know what is. There are few things more humbling than watching a police cruiser pull up in front of your old apartment while you're holding a cardboard box labeled Personal Dignity. It was 9:03 a.m. on a Wednesday, and I was about to participate in the most awkward social event imaginable, the civil standby. The concept's simple. Two officers watch while you retrieve your belongings from an ex who still thinks she's starring in a soap opera. Basically, it's divorce cosplay with badges. Ben was my designated sidekick, mostly because he'd begged to witness the chaos in its natural habitat. The man showed up with coffee and popcorn like we were attending a matinee. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked, handing me the cup. "Ready," I said. "Ben, I've been emotionally homeless for weeks. I'm just here to collect my coffee maker and what's left of my pride." We climbed out of the car, and the lead officer, Officer Hernandez, according to the name tag, approached us with the weary expression of someone who's seen too many domestic disputes and not enough donuts. "You're Mr. Reed?" she asked. "That's me," I said. "All right," she said. "You've got 30 minutes to retrieve your property. Stay calm. Don't engage in arguments. Don't touch each other. We're not therapists, we're referees." "Got it," I said. I promised to use only verbal sarcasm. She gave me the look of a woman who'd heard that before. "Let's go." We rode the elevator up, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. My heart wasn't pounding, just steady, calm, like a man who'd already made peace with whatever spectacle waited behind that door. When the elevator doors opened, the scene did not disappoint. Sophie opened the door wearing my robe. And not just wearing it, thriving in it. Like it was couture. She had a mug in her hand and an expression that said, "You thought you'd seen Audacity before? Behold, the sequel." Behind her, Theo was sprawled on the couch, shirtless, like some kind of lounge lizard on vacation. His hair was messy, his confidence wasn't, and my once impeccably clean living room now looked like the set of an early 2000s music video. "Well," I said, smiling politely, "this is nostalgic in a horrifying way." Theo turned his head lazily. "Hey man," he said, "didn't know you were coming by." "Really?" I said, "because the part where I scheduled a police standby might have tipped you off." Sophie folded her arms, mug clutched like a prop. "You didn't need to bring the police. This is dramatic, even for you." Officer Hernandez stepped in, professional and unamused. "Ma'am, he's here to retrieve his property. You were informed of this." Sophie gave a tight smile. I didn't think he'd actually use the civil standby. "Well," I said, stepping inside, "you didn't think I'd leave either. We're both full of surprises." Theo stood up slowly, trying to look diplomatic. "Let's all just keep it cool, yeah? No need for hostility." I gestured to him with my coffee. "You're shirtless in another man's home, Theo. I think hostility's already on the menu." "Hey, I'm just trying to de-escalate." "Then maybe de-sit on my couch." The officer cleared her throat. "Let's keep this civil, gentlemen." "Of course," I said, smiling. "I'm all about civility. That's why I brought the law." I moved through the apartment methodically, checking off items on my mental list like I was shopping at the world's saddest IKEA. Laptop, check. Design tablet, check. My espresso machine, the altar of my sanity, still on the counter, gleaming like it missed me. "Come to Papa," I muttered, unplugging it carefully. Theo watched me pack with mild curiosity, like a tourist observing local customs. "You really labeling your boxes?" he asked. "I'm an architect," I said. "We label everything. Keeps chaos from pretending its personality." He chuckled. "You're intense, man. Better intense than unemployed and shirtless." "Okay, that's uncalled for." "Yeah," I said, "so was you." Sophie made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a growl. "You're unbelievable." "Thank you," I said cheerfully. "That's my LinkedIn tagline." Officer Hernandez stepped closer, clearly regretting every career choice that led her to this moment. "Mr. Reed, just focus on your items, please." I nodded, zipping another box. "Oh, I am. I'm laser-focused on my personal property and the smell of betrayal." I found my record collection next, half gone. "Sophie," I said without turning, "where are my vinyls?" She hesitated. Theo said he liked them. I looked over my shoulder, deadpan. "You gave my records to the human equivalent of elevator music?" Theo raised his hands. "Hey, I was going to give them back." Officer Hernandez stepped in again. "Ma'am, he's entitled to all items listed in the lease inventory." Sophie huffed. "Fine. Take your stupid music." I smiled, sliding them back into the box. Thank you. My stupid music appreciates your generosity. As I worked, Ben quietly filmed the process, not to post, but to keep as insurance. Dude, he whispered, this is better than reality TV. You're killing it. I'm not killing it, I said. I'm documenting it. He nodded solemnly. That's even colder. By the time I reached the bedroom, I was halfway between exhaustion and amusement. Sophie stood in the doorway, blocking my path. You don't have to do this, she said softly. I paused. Yes, I do. Can't we just talk? We tried that, I said, setting another item into a box. You called me emotionally unavailable, then emotionally manipulative, then emotionally robotic. I'm running out of adjectives. She crossed her arms. You're still making jokes. It's either that or cry, and I'm all out of waterproof mascara. Her eyes softened for a second. I never meant to hurt you, Marcus. I met her gaze. But you did. Repeatedly. And at some point, intent stops matching. Theo, sensing emotional tension, stepped in like an unwanted ad pop-up. Hey, maybe I should. I cut him off. Yes, you should. Back up. Officer Hernandez looked ready to intervene again. I raised a hand. Relax, officer. I'm calm. This is calm. This is the gold standard of calm. Ben muttered. You're terrifying when you're calm. Thank you, I said. It's a skill. I loaded the last box and sealed it with the kind of finality you only get from heartbreak and good tape. All right, I said to the officer. I'm done. Theo shrugged. Guess this is goodbye, huh? Oh, Theo, I said, smiling. This was goodbye the moment you took your shirt off in my living room. Sophie looked like she wanted to slap me and hug me simultaneously. Instead, she said, you'll regret this. Maybe, I said, picking up the espresso machine. But at least I'll regret it in my own place. Officer Hernandez nodded to me. We're good here. Let's go. As I walked out, Sophie called after me, voice trembling with anger and pride. You think you've won? I stopped at the door, turned slightly, and said, No, Sophie. I just stopped playing. The elevator ride down was the quietest moment I'd had in weeks. Ben exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Bro, that was cinematic. Tragicomic, I corrected. A genre of its own. He laughed. You're either going to write a book about this or start a podcast. Maybe both, I said. Call it Blueprints for Boundaries. When we reached the lobby, Officer Hernandez gave me a polite nod. Good luck, Mr. Reed. Thanks, I said. I think I've finally built something stable. Ben and I loaded the boxes into the trunk of his car. He turned to me, still chuckling. Man, that guy was seriously shirtless at 9 a.m. What kind of confidence is that? The kind that comes from not paying rent, I said. We drove in silence for a while before he spoke again. So what now? I looked out the window at the passing cityscape. Now I rebuild. Without glitter. Without chaos. Just structure. He smirked. You gonna miss her? Every now and then, I said honestly. But only like you miss a firework. Bright, loud, and better admired from a distance. When we unloaded at my temporary apartment, Ben helped me carry the boxes up. My new place was smaller, quieter, undecorated. Just white walls and potential. I set the espresso machine on the counter like a sacred object. There, I said. Civilization restored. Ben handed me a bottle from one of the boxes. Found this. Scotch. Want me to stay? Nah, I said, smiling. Go home, man. You've done enough damage control. He nodded. You sure you're good? Yeah, I said. For the first time in a long time. After he left, I unpacked slowly, piece by piece, rebuilding my life from boxes labeled office, kitchen, memories I haven't decided on yet. Every item I placed felt like reclaiming a square inch of my identity. By nightfall, the place actually started to look like mine. I made coffee just for the symbolism. The first sip tasted like freedom, slightly bitter, perfectly earned. Aurora pinged on my phone with a notification, new device detected. Would you like to sync to existing profile? I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, no? Start fresh. It replied, welcome, Marcus. System initialized. I smiled. Clean slate. As I stood there, looking at the soft glow of my new lamp over the packed boxes, I realized something important. Closure isn't fireworks. It's not screaming matches or revenge victories. It's standing in your own quiet apartment, sipping bad coffee, and realizing the world didn't end. It just resized itself. And yeah, Theo might still be shirtless somewhere. Sophie might still be furious. But me? I was finally off the emotional grid, unsubscribed from chaos, rebuilding without glitter or drama, just good lighting and peace. You ever think you've reached the end of the story, only for life to yell, plot twist, and hand you a court summons? That was my Tuesday. I woke up to an email from the county clerk's office confirming that my unlawful detainer case had been filed and that the defendant, my soon-to-be ex, Sophie, had been properly notified. It was the least romantic sentence I'd ever read, and somehow, it was also the most satisfying. I used to wake up to "Good morning, babe." Now it was case hashtag 4092-73 has been accepted for review. I'll take it. See, Sophie didn't leave. I gave her 30 days notice, and instead of packing, she went full squatter princess. She stayed in the apartment like it was her birthright, sipping my wine, using my Wi-Fi, and, I assume, rehearsing her sad victim monologue for her friends. Every day she stayed, my patience depreciated like a luxury car with bad mileage. When I confronted her over text, she wrote, "You can't evict me from my home. It's our home." I replied, "It's actually my lease. You were the guest star." She didn't answer, which was fine, because the sheriff eventually would. The next few weeks turned into a waiting game. Legal paperwork moved slower than a toddler on a sugar crash. But I had a secret weapon, my attorney, Sharon Wells. Sharp, calm, and terrifying in heels. She specialized in property disputes and high-drama dissolutions, which sounded like she moonlighted as a therapist for the emotionally volatile. She looked at me over her glasses during our first meeting. "Mr. Reed," she said, "you've documented everything, yes?" I slid a folder across her desk. Receipts, messages, photos, system logs, even Aurora reports. Her eyebrows rose. "Aurora, my smart home system. It tracks environmental anomalies and user activity." She blinked, impressed, and maybe a little alarmed. "You're the first client I've had whose witness is a thermostat." "She's reliable," I said. Sharon smirked. "Then let's build you a case, Mr. Reed. Consider this your blueprint for peace." That line almost made me emotional. Almost. The hearing was scheduled for mid-October. Sophie didn't file a response, which legally meant she'd basically ghosted the court. Poetic, right? The same woman who loved confrontation suddenly discovered the art of avoidance. By the time Judgment Day rolled around, it was just me, Sharon, and the quiet hum of justice about to be served. That morning, I wore my best competent adult outfit, gray blazer, dark jeans, no tie. The kind of look that says, I measure stress in square footage. Sharon reviewed the paperwork as we waited in the hallway. Once we get the default judgment, the sheriff will issue a 5-day notice. She'll have that time to vacate voluntarily. And if she doesn't? I asked. Sharon smiled the way dentists do before they drill. Then she'll leave involuntarily. Inside the courtroom, it was anticlimactic in the best possible way. The judge glanced over the documents, asked a few questions, and then said, "Judgment for the plaintiff." That was it. Years of love, months of chaos, and now, 4 words and a gavel tap. Outside, Sharon handed me the paperwork. "Congratulations, Mr. Reed. You're officially the lawful occupant." I looked down at the stamped order. "It's not the victory I imagined." "That's because you're still human," she said. "Don't worry, that'll fade." I laughed, shook her hand, and drove straight to the sheriff's office to file the enforcement order. It felt bizarrely efficient, like I was checking off the final step in an emotional renovation project. Demolition, complete. Cleanup, pending. The deputies scheduled the eviction for Friday morning. I wasn't allowed to be there during the initial removal. They said it was for safety reasons. Translation: they didn't want me throwing sarcastic grenades while Sophie screamed about injustice. Fair. Friday came. I stood across the street again, just like I had the day the process server showed up, except this time there were uniforms, radios, and the kind of calm authority that even Sophie couldn't out-talk. 2 deputies walked in. 5 minutes later, I heard shouting through the glass. Then came the sound of furniture being moved. Not carefully, violently. I could see her through the window, flailing, yelling, throwing her hands around like an interpretive dance about denial. One deputy held the door while the other guided her out, still ranting. She looked furious, disheveled, and weirdly proud. "You're heartless, Marcus," she shouted from the sidewalk. "You ruined my life." I wanted to say something kind, something neutral, but instead, I said, That's rich coming from the woman who threw a birthday party for her ex in my house. The deputy shot me a warning look. I raised my hands. Just saying. She screamed one last line. Something about karma, and stormed off down the block, robe flapping like a cape of delusion. The deputies followed protocol, securing the property and handing me a new set of keys. One of them, a gray-haired officer named Jenkins, looked at me and said, "Congratulations. You're the proud owner of peace and probable damages." He wasn't wrong. When they left, I stepped inside, and it hit me like a punch to the chest. The apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt vandalized. Every room was a crime scene of spite. My leather sofa, sliced open down the middle like it had been auditioning for a mob movie. The coffee table, smashed. My drafting chair, missing a wheel, which I found lodged in the drywall like she'd thrown it. The kitchen sink was clogged, cemented, literally, with coffee grounds and something that smelled like vengeance. Aurora's voice came through faintly. System damage detected. Environmental distress at 92%. "You and me both, pal," I muttered. I walked around in slow motion, taking in the destruction. The wall-mounted TV was shattered. My books, ripped apart and dumped in the bathtub. And the bathroom mirror? Written across in red lipstick. "Hope it was worth it, psycho." I stared at the words for a long time, then laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly on brand for her. Dramatic handwriting, no punctuation, full commitment to victimhood. If Shakespeare had written petty vandalism, this would have been it. I grabbed my phone, snapped photos from every angle, and emailed them to Sharon. She called 5 minutes later. "Jesus," she said. She really went for it. "She's thorough," I said. "I'll give her that." "You'll need to file for damages," she said. "We'll attach the evidence and pursue small claims. Shouldn't take long." "Good," I said. "I want this chapter ended in ink and judgment." "Keep everything documented," she said. "Don't clean yet." I looked around at the chaos. Oh, trust me, I wouldn't dream of depriving the court of this masterpiece. That weekend, I did what any self-respecting man does after emotional arson. I deep cleaned. I put on a playlist titled Post-Disaster Zen and got to work. Broken glass swept, trash bagged, floors scrubbed. It was oddly cathartic, like exorcising bad energy with Lysol and sarcasm. Every time I found something broken, I whispered, symbolic. By Sunday, the apartment looked like a minimalist showroom. Empty, clean, echoing. No more rose candles, or throw pillows, or chaos disguised as warmth. Just structure, simplicity me. The following week, I sat in small claims court, staring across the aisle at Sophie. She looked deflated, like someone who'd expected a movie climax and got a spreadsheet instead. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she tried for theatrics. "He provoked me," she said. "He emotionally abused me." The judge didn't flinch. "Do you have evidence of that?" Sophie blinked. He shut off the lights during my birthday party." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Reed." "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I also have footage of her inviting her ex-boyfriend to that same party, vandalizing my property afterward, and writing me a message in lipstick. Would you like to see it?" Her lawyer cringed. The judge said dryly, "Please." I handed over the printed photos, the receipts, the Aurora logs. The judge flipped through them, expression neutral but clearly entertained. "Did you really write 'Hope it was worth it', psycho on his mirror, Miss Lane?" Her face drained. "That's not my handwriting." "Really?" the judge said. "Because your Instagram from that same day shows you using the same shade of lipstick." Ben was in the back of the courtroom. I could hear him trying not to laugh. By the end of it, the judge ruled in my favor. $10,000 in damages. The number wasn't huge, but the validation? Immense. It wasn't about the money. It was about the acknowledgement that my sanity hadn't been imaginary. As we left, Sophie brushed past me, whispering, "You think this makes you the hero?" I smiled softly. "No, Sophie. Just the survivor." That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of scotch, the city glowing beneath me. The apartment was quiet again. No drama, no shouting, no soundtrack but the hum of the refrigerator. I'd finally reached the part of the story where silence wasn't punishment. It was peace. Aurora chimed softly from inside. "Would you like to resume background music?" I thought for a moment, then said, "No. Let's enjoy the quiet." And for the first time in years, I did. There's something profoundly poetic about winning a lawsuit against someone who once swore they loved you forever. Forever, apparently, means until the damages are itemized. The morning of the hearing, I woke up feeling like a man about to defend his dissertation on the topic of emotional architecture and the physics of petty. My exhibit, a stack of receipts, a binder of photographs, and a smart home log file that could double as a witness testimony. If there were a Grammy for organized revenge, I'd be front row, tux pressed. The courtroom wasn't cinematic. It was beige, emotionally and literally. The walls, the chairs, the clerk's cardigan. Everything looked like it had given up on passion decades ago. Ben came with me, of course, claiming he wanted to observe justice in action. But really, he just wanted to see if Sophie would attempt another performance. He even brought popcorn, hidden in his briefcase like a toddler smuggling candy into a movie theater. When Sophie entered, the air changed. She looked composed, which for her meant she'd replaced rage with performative sadness. Hair perfectly straightened, lipstick a softer tone this time, subtle, remorseful, manipulative. She avoided my eyes, probably because she knew mine were busy drafting internal blueprints of satisfaction. The bailiff called our case, and just like that, the saga became state record. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Sharon Wells, my lawyer and my unofficial emotional bodyguard. Sharon had the calm of a surgeon and the empathy of a shark. Sophie sat opposite, flanked by her lawyer, a man with the defeated aura of someone paid in apologies. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a voice that could silence earthquakes, began, "Mr. Reed, Ms. Lane, we're here to address damages resulting from property destruction following an eviction. I've reviewed the documents. Let's start with evidence." Sharon slid the binder forward like it was a holy text. "Your Honor, Exhibit A, photographic documentation of vandalism consistent with retaliatory intent. Exhibit B, written note left by the defendant. Exhibit C, smart home data confirming no unauthorized access post-eviction, proving the damages occurred prior." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Smart home data?" Sharon smiled. "Yes, Your Honor. My client's system recorded environmental anomalies, motion, temperature, lighting. Think of it as an impartial roommate." The judge nodded slowly. "Proceed." On cue, Sharon handed her the printed screenshots from Aurora. Lines of timestamp data. Environmental anomaly detected. Temperature spike. Unrecognized user movement detected in living room. Audio signature. High decibel yelling. I leaned toward Ben and whispered, "Even my house testifies better than she does." He almost choked on a popcorn kernel. Then came Sophie's turn. Her lawyer stood, buttoning his jacket with the energy of a man about to defend a broken toaster. "Your Honor," he said, "my client acknowledges emotional distress but denies malicious intent. The damages were incidental, the result of a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" the judge asked. She spray-painted his mirror. "It was lipstick," he said weakly. The judge glanced at me. "Lipstick?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "Shade. Blood of My Enemies by Estee Lauder." A laugh rippled through the courtroom. Even the clerk smiled. Sophie's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the desk. The judge sighed. "All right, let's get to the heart of it. Ms. Lane, did you write this note?" She held up the photo. "Hope it was worth it, psycho." Sophie's voice trembled. "I might have. I was upset." "Might have." Sophie bit her lip. "Okay, I did. Do you dispute causing the other damages listed?" She glanced at her lawyer, then at me. "I don't remember everything clearly. I couldn't help myself." "That's convenient. You should try vandalism with amnesia more often. It's very avant-garde." The judge shot me a look that said, "I like you, but shut up." I obeyed. Sharon closed her binder. "Your Honor, my client isn't here for vengeance. He's here for accountability. He's replaced the sofa, repaired the floors, and endured the cost of her destruction with the same precision he brings to his profession. He builds stability for a living. Yet Ms. Lane turned his home into an art installation about chaos. That was why I hired her. That, and her ability to weaponize adjectives." The judge nodded, flipping through the evidence again. "I see invoices, receipts, photographs, corroborating messages. It's quite thorough." Sharon smiled. "My client's middle name might as well be documentation." "Actually, it's Raymond," I whispered. The judge set down her pen. "Ms. Lane, you willfully damaged your ex-partner's property. This court awards Mr. Reed $10,000 in compensation. Boom. Gavel. Final. I felt something release inside me, like pressure dropping after a long storm. Sophie looked pale, stunned. Her lawyer muttered something about appeals, but she barely heard him. When the session adjourned, she stood up and finally looked at me. "You think this makes you better than me?" she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "It makes me done with you." Her eyes glistened, not with remorse but indignation. "You ruined my reputation." "Sophie," I said, "you handed it to me pre-ruined. I just filed the paperwork." She turned away, muttering something about karma, and walked out, leaving the smell of expensive perfume and poor decisions behind her. Ben exhaled dramatically. "That was wow. 10 grand and poetic justice? You're basically Batman." Sharon smirked. "Batman still pays my retainer." Outside, sunlight hit my face, and for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. The air felt lighter, the city louder, but in a good way. I'd spent so long drowning in noise, arguments, accusations, anxiety, that actual silence felt alien. Beautiful, but unfamiliar. Ben and I went to celebrate the only way men know how, by pretending we weren't celebrating. We ended up at a diner that smelled like syrup and second chances. He ordered pancakes. I ordered black coffee and the quiet satisfaction of victory. "So," Ben said between bites, "what now?" "I start over." He grinned. "New city." "No. New mindset." "You gonna rebuild Aurora?" I thought about that. The system had been my pride, my symbol of control. But it also represented the old me, the guy who thought order could fix chaos. "Nah," I said finally. "I'm going analog." "Analog," he repeated. "Light switches. Dumb bulbs. Manual thermostat. No more automation. I want to live in a place that doesn't try to predict me." Ben raised his mug. "To dumb houses and smart men." I clinked mine against his. "I'll drink to that." When I got home that evening, the apartment was quiet, eerily so. No humming lights, no auto-adjusting ambience, no synthetic voice greeting me. Just me and the faint buzz of the fridge. I sat down on my new sofa, cheaper, smaller, but blissfully intact, and stared at the blank wall where my old smart display used to be. I didn't miss it. For the first time, I realized how peaceful uncurated silence could be. I didn't need Aurora to dim the lights for mood. I didn't need sensors to tell me when to relax. I could just exist. The next few days were strange in their simplicity. I went to work, met deadlines, laughed again. Real laughter, not the kind you fake to diffuse tension. I bought plants. Real ones, not self-watering ones. I even learned their names, Oscar the fern and Brenda the snake plant. They required minimal attention and never texted me at 3 a.m. Sophie tried one last time to reach out. An email this time. Subject line, "You won, okay?" Inside, "I hope you're happy. I'm not the monster you think I am." I stared at it for a long minute before typing back. Neither of us were monsters. We were just badly matched architects trying to live in the same blueprint. Then I hit send and archived the thread. No attachments. No dramatics. Just digital finality. Closure doesn't always feel like triumph. Sometimes it feels like coming home to a place you used to love and realizing you've outgrown it. A week later, I invited Ben over. He stood in the doorway, looking around. "Wow. No tech. No chaos. Just walls. Feels good. Peaceful," I said. "Feels like a museum of calm." Exactly what I was going for. He smirked. "You dating again?" I laughed. "Not yet. I'm still in a committed relationship with personal space." That night, after he left, I stood by the window, city lights blinking in the distance. The air conditioner hummed quietly, manual, imperfect, human. I made myself tea and thought about how everything had come full circle. From the man who measured life in millimeters to the man who finally stopped measuring altogether. I didn't rebuild Aurora, but I did keep one piece of it, the main light strip, now permanently disconnected. I turned it on by hand each night. The soft glow reminded me not of the chaos it once accompanied, but of the calm that followed. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about Sophie, not in anger, just curiosity. I wonder if she's happy, if Theo's still around, if she ever tells her version of the story at parties. I hope she does. Let her have her narrative. I've got mine, and it's quieter. Every morning now, I wake up to the sound of the kettle, not a robotic chime. I measure coffee, not emotions. I leave the blinds half open so sunlight decides when to enter. And I smile, Not because life's perfect, but because it's finally mine. They say architects build to last, but maybe the secret is knowing when to demolish. Because peace, as it turns out, isn't found in what you construct. It's found in what you stop trying to rebuild. And so, I sit here, mug in hand, surrounded by stillness, realizing the truest thing I've ever built is the quiet after the storm.